Greetings to everyone. Good evening from India, good morning, good afternoon from various time zones across the world. And thank you very much for being a part of this very special evening where the Hearth Within celebrates a house of words, a Festschrift in honor of our beloved poet, Keki N. Daruwalla. This particular book, which has been traveling very happily ever since it entered the world a month or so ago, is the hard work of Usha Akella, obviously, its editor, who has survived a very, very tough period of physical unhealthiness, who has managed to live with this manuscript for more than 2 years, struggling through various contributors, the entire editorial process. But the end result of all this has been a very, very beautiful book that justifies the work, the multifaceted work of Keki and Daruwalla. Its several contributors have been able to talk about in their memoirs and their papers. They have been able to talk about the various ways in which Daruwalla has been a very significant influence in their lives. And I think not one of us writing in India today would have been able to do without the influence, the mentorship, the very, very indomitable spirit of a man like Keki and Daruwalla. So we celebrate the book, we celebrate the man, and we also are grateful to the editor for bringing to us this fabulous collection, which would, of course, have not come up without her vision and management. Thank you, Usha Akella, for giving this book to the world. Thank you for bringing it to the Hearth Within. And thank you to every contributor who is here today to share their feelings for the poet, for poetry, and this book. So, without much ado, I would like to begin the session. And I think I would like to begin by inviting Usha to maybe offer a few comments on the work and to welcome the contributors here. Over to you, Usha.
Thank you, Basudhara, and thank you, everybody, for being here. It's so nice to see the faces till this point. I think we were emailing, and it was mostly an email correspondence. I'd like to turn that gratitude back to Basudhara because this project actually started with her and with the Hearth Within. It began, I think, with tremendous warmth, enthusiasm, and support from Basudhara's side. And she was really my pillar of support throughout. Always with kind words, always with an ear, with a shoulder. We all have, I think, manned editorial and authorial projects, and we know what we sacrifice and what we give to it. So when we have friends along the way who are genuine and are there to bolster you and stand by you, it's a wonderful, wonderful feeling and a ride. So I'm very cognizant that an anthology of this kind does not really belong to one person, even if that person is the editor. It belongs to all the contributors because there'd be no book without that generosity. And I think it says a lot for Keki and Daruwalla in the way people rallied around without hesitation. People wanted to write new pieces. Most of the pieces in the book are new. And maybe a little later, if there's a chance, I can talk about the book editorially. But I feel I'm repeating myself at these events. So I probably just leave it here at this stage, and we actually hear from the contributors because that was very important for me to have events where we could hear everyone and we could listen to everyone and not just the editor or the panelists. So I think the stage is really yours, and you get a chance to talk about your insights, both from a literary point of view and also just from a personal point of view to celebrate the man and his work. Thank you.
Thank you, Usha. Thank you very much. It's very generous of you to say that a book like this belongs to everyone. For indeed, a book like this does belong to everyone. And we hope that it has a very significant journey in the years to come, because every scholar must not only know poetry, but also know the soul, especially if they are aspiring to be poets themselves. They must know the kind of soul, the kind of responsibility that a poet needs to undertake, all the while the necessity to be at the beck and call, of his own integrity. This is, I think, what Keki and Daruwalla has justified, and the fact that so many of us have gathered here today to offer our tribute to him is a testimony of a life very, very well lived. So I would like to begin with Anita Nahal, and I would like to ask her to talk about Keki, to talk about this book, and also her own memoir. Yes, over to you, Anita Nahal.
Thank you, Basudra. Hello to everyone. Kudos, first of all, to Usha for conceptualizing and Basudra together for conceptualizing this book and bringing it all, so beautifully, cohesively together. So, what I'm going to talk about is the generational connection that I have with Keki through my father, Chaman Nahar. I came to know him through my father, and I didn't know him very well, but I read about him and I heard about him at home from my father. And I'm going to read a little bit from the passage that is there in the book that I had provided. And when I was reading Basudra, your uh, preface and Usha's introduction, it struck me, and I've still to go through everyone's, I will slowly. It struck me that you both had spoken about the humility of Keki Daruwalla. And that is also what I talk about in this short piece of mine. My father and Keki were 10 years apart, almost in age. Keki was born on June 24th, 1937, so he turned 87. My father, if he had been alive, he was born on August 2nd, 1927, and he would have been 97 a few days ago. So I'm just going to read from the piece. I was probably in my late teens when I first became acquainted with Keki and Daruwalla. My father, Chaman Nahal, also a writer and professor of English at University of Delhi, spoke very highly of Keki sir. Whenever he became nostalgic of the creative world's luminaries who were not haughty nor arrogant. My father did not appreciate critics and would lament that it was easy to critique another's writings when that person may not have written a single novel or a poetry book themselves. He believed very few critics or writers were humble and truly interested in the success of another writer. Most wanted to pull others down, and only a few offered sound advice and mentoring, which would inspire and help writers grow. Among those to whom he credited his growth included Mulk Raj Anand, Shiv K. Kumar, Amrita Pritham, Keki Daruwalla, Nazim Ezekiel, many others not mentioned in my piece. I feel a certain legacy of connectivity with Keki sir, even though I don't know him personally. Recently, I had the astounding opportunity to be on a panel with Keki sir celebrating 75 years of India's independence. He spoke about his writings and memories of the time, and I spoke about my father's novel, Azadi, and my parents' memories of the partition. Both my father and mother frantically crossed the border from Pakistan to India in the harrowing weeks, actually before, uh, weeks prior to the partition in August 1947. And this seminar on which Keki and I had both participated was organized by the Osmania University Center of International Studies, Hyderabad, India. So a shout out to them as well. I was petrified, to say the least, to share the platform with Keki. What if he found errors in what I said? Or what if he did not like what I said? What if? What if played on my mind for many days prior to the event. However, true to my father's depictions, Keki Sir was a paragon of humility and grace. And I was able to share my father's words about him with him directly that day on Zoom. He smiled unassumingly, thanked me for letting me know, and spoke warmly of my father. I am grateful I could establish a bond of generational friendship, which reinforced my father's words that in the literary scene, very few are true gems. Keki Sir is indeed one of them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anita ma'am. And I think this is two memoirs together. It commemorates Keki sir as well as your father. And I agree with your father that it is easier to critique than to create, because people mostly feel that critiquing does not need any kind of backdrop or training. Most of them are untrained critics. So it's easy to be an untrained critic. I agree with your father. Thank you very much for your beautiful words. And my regards to your father, who would have been very, very proud of you today.
Thank you so much.
I would next like to call upon Rachna Joshi to share her feelings for Keki sir and also this wonderful piece that she has created for the book. Over to you, Rachna.
Well, I'll first talk about my long association with Keki Daruwalla, and then I'll say something about this book. Um, Actually, I've contributed a personal essay in the Festschrift section of the book. And in my essay, I have talked about my long association with Mr. Daruwalla, his late wife, and two daughters, Anahita and Ruxan, as we were family friends. My mother, being an English professor, followed his writings right from the days of Writers' Workshop, and my father was an IPS colleague of his. He has become a kind of literary mentor for me. His poems, he told me once, you don't have to go to London or New York or Paris to become a writer. You can write wherever you are. And in his service career, he toured many regions and he saw a flood, so he wrote about it, like Ghagra and Spate, or he went to a riot torn city and he's written Curfew in a Riot Torn City. So, his later poems, of course, are a lot about his Parsi roots, like Fire Altar. And also his stint in the Minorities Commission, I think, led to a social sensibility. Now, I want to say something about the book. The book is divided into many sections: reflections, festschrift, interviews, imagery, and aphorisms. Reflections consists of critical and scholarly essays on Keki. In Arundhati Subramaniam's essay taken from the preface to Neshapur and Babylon poems, she says that the hawk, the eagle, and the falcon have been strong symbols in his poetry. So she says, waiting for a magical sighting of a heron's underbelly or a flash of owl plumage in the poetry proved rewarding. She also says that the bird that one rode uh, an ascending wind begins to wheel, provoking circular meditations on mortality, on beginnings and endings. Then again, Malashri Lal has mentioned some of his woman-centered narratives like A House in Ranikhet. And also commendable is Love Across the Salt Desert, which speaks of cross-border smuggling and the romance of camel trainers. Uh, his latest collection of stories, Going, consists of tales about kinship and the anxiety of loss. Daughter is about the relationship in the Parsi home of Ardashir Bilimoria and his daughter Arnavaz, who is in love with a Muslim boy. The tale not only is about intergenerational conflict. He offers not a dark vision of living, but a buoyant one. Politics, humor, caricature, sprightly dialogue, risque phrases make for the pace of his tales. I would like to mention his novels also, like For Pepper and Christ, Ancestral Affairs, and So Swerving to Solitude, Letters to Mama, which are wider in vision. There are also interviews and articles on imagery and aphorisms in this book right at the end. I personally feel that his vision of humanity is profound. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rachna. And those were such beautiful observations. And yes, as Urna points out, sorry, as Kashiana points out, this connection between the policeman and the poet is something which makes him both, a public figure and also a recluse. And he's able to balance, this reclusive nature with his social commitment, with his poetic responsibilities. Thank you very much for bringing these ideas, for bringing this valuable connection to us. And we relish and cherish him once again through your words. Thank you. I would next like to invite Radha Chakravarti to talk about her views, or rather her personal precious memories with Keki Daruwalla. Over to you, Radha ma'am.
Thank you, Basudhara. And thank you, Hearth, for organizing this very important commemorative event. I really think it's important, an event like this, where we come together to celebrate a figure like Keki Daruwalla, so dear to all of us and someone whom we admire so hugely. And also a huge congratulations to Usha Akella for putting together a house of words in which all our voices are featured. Um, I want to say something that overlaps a lot with what Rachna said about the personal connection with Keki Daruwalla, because I too first encountered him at a very young age as a family friend and associate of members of my family who were in the police service, including my father, my grandfather, and my uncle. So I've known him for many, many years, for many decades, and I used to be in awe of him. A writer visiting the house. I never dreamt that one day I would, dare to write poetry, and that he would become my mentor. But that is what would eventually happen. But what also happened was that I got to know him better in the 1980s, where in London, where he was posted when I was posted there as the wife of a diplomat, a much younger person then. And that is where I also got to know his family, and especially Khurshid. And I remember her wearing her Parsi saris and the lovely food she used to lay out, and the warmth of her atmosphere, and Keki and his daughters. And I remember his fatherly affection, and I remember Khurshid's charm and vivacity. It's very alive in my mind. I also saw him go through the terrible tragedy, and it's something that always was shared between us in silence. Over the years, whenever I have met him, after a while, his eyes glisten with tears, and we don't talk about it. But that past looms in both our memories in a very, very poignant way. And it happened even when I visited him recently in his home. And we both shed tears. I would agree with everyone about his humility, and I do see him as a figure full of contradictions. He is a policeman and a poet. He is a sharp, witty satirist and critic of society and human foibles, but he is also a tender and loving, affectionate family man And he is both a very private person and at the same time a public personality. And somewhere in behind all of this is a very I think behind this very forthright, a very down to earth exterior. And he's a person who does not mince his words, as I discovered when he mentored me, when and encouraged me. I think I became a poet, or dared to call myself a poet, because of his encouragement. But he never minced his words when he responded to any appeal to give me his opinions about something I had drafted or written, and I benefited immensely from that. So his honesty, his forthrightness stays in my mind, but also his humility, from which stems his incredible dignity. And what I feel is that behind that often gruff exterior, there hides a very vulnerable self. And when he talks about living on hyphens, which is also the borrowed title of the piece that I have written in this wonderful Festschrift, I feel he was indeed a person who lived on hyphens. And in a poem in Night River, in the volume Night River, he says a poem is an island in itself. And I feel that Keki Daruwalla himself is something of an island, connected, with the great ocean around him, but somewhere a very private and vulnerable person. And if I have a minute, I'd like to read a few lines from the poem Night River, which is uh, from the poem Living on Hyphens, which is from the volume Night River, which he signed specially to me. I don't know if you can see this, but it's a very treasured book for me. It's something that I really treasure. Living on Hyphens. Living on hyphens, a man needs to anchor himself between dream and landscape, and between dream and the dark blood congealing on cobblestones, between hierarchy and disorder, between the slow rhythms of seasons and the frenetic pace of blood. A man must have, a man must arrive at some sort of understanding. And a little later, he says, between the face and the mask that looks better than the face, between love for the land and hatred for the times, between the smog one lives in and the hope one lives on, a man, a woman must come to an understanding. But happiness lies in the familiar, in the penumbra one can sense, not soot from the heavens necessarily and the grit-infested air, but yesterday's blue space still pulsing with yesterday's light and radio signals. Happy with just one boxed in sky, one feeling, love, one sense of loss, one window, despair. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Radha ma'am, for your words and especially for reading that poem. Because bringing in that particular poem was bringing in Keki sir into this gathering. I think that is one of my favorites also. And I think this book is very close to his own heart. And the number of poems in the latest Landfall has many poems which have this image of the night. So my favorite poem from Landfall is a poem called The Night Attendant. In fact, it's a series of poems called The Night Attendant. And I think it deeply takes all the poems that have their imagery based on the night, deeply take off from this particular poem that you just read. So thank you very much for bringing in this piece today, for reading it so evocatively. Thank you. I would now like to call upon Shanta Acharya ma'am. It's very kind of her to join us, given the fact that she has been very disturbed. She is in mourning these days. And Shanta ma'am, we are in solidarity with you. We share your sorrow. And we are very grateful that you could join us to talk about someone who is very close to our hearts. Over to you.
Thank you, Vasudhara. It's been really fascinating listening to everyone. I mean, Anita, Rachna, you, Usha, Radha. There's so many strands that sort of interweave, that you get to see Keki in different sort of angles, but there's so much commonality as well. I mean, his first book, really, Under Orion, which was published in 1970 by the Writers' Workshop, established him as a name to reckon with in Indian poetry, and then his collected poems published by Penguin in 2006 provide testimony to his lasting legacy. And several of his books have appeared since, and over the years, he has been the recipient of numerous awards and honors. So, the House of Words, this Festschrift in honor of Keki and Daruwalla, is a true and fitting tribute to one of our finest poets. So, my sincere thanks to Usha, Vasudhara, the Sahitya Academy, and all the other contributors and all the other people who would have made all this happen. When I think of Daruwalla's writing, what comes to mind is his mastery of language and vision, and the breadth of his vision. His range is sweeping. In addition to social comment, philosophical content, reflections on the natural world, we encounter uh, humor, wit, and irony. So, from the epic concerns of culture and history, myth and religion, to the quotidian affairs of life and death, love and passion, and his sensibility is among the most cosmopolitan and humane of his generation in India. I first met Keki Daruwalla in Oxford at a poetry reading by Kathleen Rain in the early 1980s, and so began a friendship cherished over the years. I had read his poems as a student in Cuttack, but meeting Keki, he was Keki to all his friends, was a gift of a lifetime. When he was posted to the Indian High Commission in London, it gave me a chance to get to know his family, just as Radha did, his much beloved wife, Khurshid, and two lovely daughters, Anahita and Rupsen. I've been a guest at their home in Mount Kailash on several occasions and will always treasure those memories. Spending time with Keki and family in Delhi during my annual visits to Orissa was a part of my annual pilgrimage to see my family. Keki knew my younger brother very well, and he would be deeply sorry to have heard about his death. In 2004, my first collection of poems, Not This, Not That, was published by Rupa, thanks to Keki's invitation to submit a collection. He has supported so many poets that this Festschrift is a mere token of one's deep gratitude and appreciation. He has reviewed and endorsed my books. In fact, he has done the same for several poets. It has been a privilege and pleasure to review some of Keki's poetry collections. I interviewed him for Acumen, an established literary journal in the UK, in January 2017. It is a delight that the poem accompanying this interview was included in the Forward Book of Poetry in 2018. When Art Publications in the UK published Keki Daruwalla's The Glass Blower selected poems in April 2008, he had already published 10 volumes of poetry, including his collected. Now, as it happens, Art published my poetry collection, Dreams That Spell the Light, in March 2010, followed by Kunwar Narayan's No Other World selected poems in May 2010. It was an honor and pleasure to read with both these giants of Indian literature at an event hosted by the Sahitya Academy. It has been my good fortune to hear Keki recite his poems in his home, and he reads with as much gusto and passion and seriousness of occasion as he would at any formal reading. It has been a long and memorable journey. We've corresponded for well over 30 years about poetry, life, at all. From time to time, we exchanged poems and commented on each other's work. Reviewing our correspondence makes me smile, reminding me of Keki's tremendous sense of humor. In his Acumen interview, he said, "Irony and sarcasm keeps one sane. I started writing initially as a satirist." In his poem Sidelines in Night River, he exhorts us, "Live on the fringe, but die at the center." A good aphorism is one which is true on the flip side as well. So die on the fringe, but live at the center. But don't, for Pete's sake, live on the fringe and die there too. It will be safe to say that Daruwalla has and will always occupy the center, not just of the literary world he has flourished in, but in the hearts of his admirers and followers, for his humanity, his generosity, his humility, and innumerable qualities that are so rare today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shantavam, for those very, very warm words, for the memories shared, and also for throwing so much light on Keki and Daruwalla as a poet. So, as a poet and critic, he has been very gracious, as you say, with youngsters, with his contemporaries, his peers, and he has offered very honest advice. That is another thing that I admire very much about him. He's very honest, very brusque when it comes to offering advice. And then, but at the same time, there is, I think Kashiana has put it very well in the chat box. I think I'll go back to Kashiana's particular phrasing. Yes, so she talks about a tender heart and an acerbic tongue. So it's a beautiful turn of phrase to come from a poet herself. So, yes, he has done all his criticism and his encouragement with complete honesty. And that is what, at the end, I think, at the end of the day, that is what stays with us. Thank you very much for reminding us of that. And from Shantacharya ma'am, I would next like to call upon A.J. Thomas sir. Thomas sir, thank you very much for being here with us. And over to you for your thoughts. You will have to unmute. Thomas sir, you'll have to unmute. You're not audible, sir. I think there's some problem with the earphone. You just take off the earphone. No, we cannot hear you. Yes, for a moment, I think there was a sound signal. Please try speaking once again. No.
Probably you need to disconnect the wire that's connecting the earphones to the laptop or your device.
Yes, the wire also will have to be taken away so that the sound becomes active. This is one problem that we face with digital communication. And we have faced this problem with Keki sir all the time. We have seen him in front of us. We have not heard him. Sometimes we have heard him, but we have not seen him. And I remember for many days we used to have during the pandemic, we had a neighbor's number saved, his neighbor. So whenever he was unable to connect, we would call up his neighbor and say, please thoda sa jaakar connect kar dijiye na. And I wonder what that fellow thought of us. But he was a lifesaver for many of us on many, many programs.
Actually, if you take the cursor on Thomas's image, the mic is on.
Okay.
Okay.
I will.
It's not
I'm
muted.
not receiving a
But I
request. If
think
I
you
receive a
need-
request,
are
I
you-
will accept you. Again, it has become unmuted. I mean, you'll have to unmute. It has become muted. I'm also getting confused.
Yeah, now it's become muted again. Yeah, maybe the volume button on his phone or laptop is also low.
He says he's trying. I mean, I think he's trying to say that he's joining from his phone, but I haven't received a joining request. So the new link, the latest email. Should I email you separately? Let me email you
No,
separately.
maybe we should send the link to his mobile. I'll send it to him on WhatsApp. I'll do that.
Yes, please, Sonia. That would be very, very kind of you. So while we wait for Thomas sir to connect, Urna, Yes, Urna, we can go ahead with Urna sharing her thoughts and then we can come back to Thomas sir while Sonia sends him the link on WhatsApp. Urna, I would like to invite you. And one of the reasons I think I came across Urna was because of Keki sir. Because whenever we spoke and whenever we had conversations, he would always refer to some Urna boss. Have you met Urna? Have you read Urna? Urna is a very fine girl. She's a very fine journalist. And then, I happened to come across Urna. So I think I know Urna because of Keki Daruwalla. Urna, over to you for your thoughts.
Yeah, truly. I can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, truly. I think KKG has brought us together. That's so true. That is so true. And this is almost like life has come a full circle, Vasudhara, for us. Um, so, at one level, let's say at a primal, elemental, and fundamental level, a house of words, I feel, is a coming together of friends, colleagues, admirers, and mentees of KKG, gently and lovingly, laying out the brick walls, the patio, the sweet fragranced trellised garden, and the sun roof of a house, a home of celebration with the golden cement of our collective love for him. However, after reading a significant part of the book of A House of Words, I must say that Usha has pushed this book far beyond the purview of perhaps what she set out to do. Here, I would also like to take a moment and profusely thank the two guardian angel spirits who cradled this idea with all their love, Basudhara and Jaideep sir. And I think we can't have this discussion without thanking all three of them. A House of Words, I feel, is a ready reckoner to understand the quintessential structuralism, the philosophy, and the ethos of Kekiji's lifetime of work. It's a handy, indispensable research tool. And I feel it's like someone holding your hand to help you navigate the immensity of his writing career and the leveraging of an extraordinary imagination that fluffed out into the expansiveness of his poetry, short stories, his novels, columns, essays, and so on. I feel it's an encyclopedia in its own right, a self contained library, a literary discourse, and a collector's item all rolled into one. And I pray and hope and wish with all of my heart that this book travels through the portals of time and across generations of literature lovers, because this is Usha's contribution to keeping the legacy of Kekiji's work shimmering, shining, and blazing. 50 years, 100 years, 200 years from now, much after we are all physically dead and gone. And in its longevity and perenniality lies the power of a house of words, much like Kekiji's work. Now, in my piece, In a House of Words, I've done a deep dive into the reasons why every reader and writer worth his or her salt must read Keki and Daruwalla. I've spoken about the immediacy of Kekiji's work, the realism of Kekiji's work. But today, I'd like to very briefly touch upon something which I just love about Kekiji's work, which is the Kekization of humor, wit, and language. And I'll very briefly touch upon this. And Vasudhara, with your permission, I'll read a very short poem. So, if Salman Rushdie's Midnight's Children, which for me personally marked the beginning of postmodernism in Indian English fiction and the so called Rushdification or the chutnification of language in fiction, Keki Daruwalla not only embodies postmodern characteristics in his poetry, but pushes the envelope when it comes to form, content, imagery, allusions, idioms, and phraseology. His poetry is undergirded with a sharpened sense of observation, embellished with a pan-Indian and sometimes international sensibility. And this billows out like a summer harvest into his unique brand of irony, humor, satire, intertextuality, and much more. Wallace Stegner, the author and historian who received the Pulitzer Prize for Angle of Repose in 1972, believed a fiction writer has no other agenda but to tell the truth. And Daruwalla's USP, or unique selling proposition, is his rare and extraordinary wit, humor, satire, and irony that always leave the reader with a twinkle in the eye and a chuckle in the throat, because many a times it is sardonic, insanely accurate, on point, and sumptuously tongue-in-cheek. And I'm always reminded of what Mark Twain said about wit. He said, wit is the sudden marriage of ideas which before their union were not perceived to have any relation. And with that, I'd like to read a very short poem just to bring about this point. The poem is called Nervous Listener at Piano Recital. Piano and flute are at Mozart's Andante. I think of the slur of traffic on a rain-wet road. The flute sounds quicker. It isn't. The Delhi hoi polloi clap between movements. The toads, the flutist swings. His knees flex, hips sway to the music. My mind is not at rest. The cause, a leaking tap at home, drips on my dry memory, and between movements, the endless Delhi applause. Thank you. And with that, I'd just like to say that it is these finely ingrained psychological observations, chopped with the intense precision of a master, that makes us hungrily follow his work. And thank you so much, Usha, for doing this. Thank you so much, Vasudhara. The heart is truly a helium balloon today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Urna, for bringing in those wonderful ideas. I think one of the best parts of journalism is they teach you how to tell so much in such few words. We, on the other side of that form of writing, as academics, we know how to stretch it out. And I think it loses all the magic and charm that a very concise presentation like yours brings about. So thank you very much for those wonderful words, for throwing light on Daruwalla's work, not only as a poet, but also as a fiction writer. And he was fonder of his label as a fiction writer. He wanted to be termed more as a fiction writer than as a poet. It's very unfortunate that we can see Thomas, but we cannot hear him. It's like being very close to a well, but being unable to draw water from it. So, Thomas, very sorry. I mean, we are feeling sorry, for ourselves that we are unable to hear you. But here is something of what Thomas would have liked to share with us. It's in the chat box, and I would like to read it. So he says, "Good evening, friends. Let me begin by thanking Usha Akella, the Sahitya Akademi, and Professor Malashri Lal for taking the initiative to bring out this Festschrift in honor of our beloved Keki Sahab. It's a rare honor indeed, as I don't recall any other occasion of the Academy bringing out a Festschrift in my 27 years of close association with it. This standalone gesture proves how valuable this poet's legacy is for this institution and for all of us." On page 114 of the wonderful House of Words is Thomas's essay called Keki Daruwalla and I. And Usha, would you like to read out bits of the essay? It's on page 114.
Sure. Just give me a minute,
Yes,
Vasudhara. I
please.
have to
Yes.
accept.
Yes. So, of course, Thomas sir has been associated with Indian English poetry for a long while now. His association with the Sahitya Akademi is also for a very considerable period of time, 27 years, he says. And this essay, therefore, is a critic talking about a poet. It is about one writer talking about another. It is also a friend talking about another friend. And I think all these shared resonances, these shared echoes are to be found here.
So I'll read little excerpts from it.
Yes.
So the piece begins. There's also a longer, very, very painstaking essay by Mr. Thomas AJ in the beginning part of the book, where there's 7 longer reflections about Keki and Daruwalla's work. So he has really contributed a lot to this volume, and thank you, sir, for all the hard work that you put into supporting this, this book. So his opening paragraph: in the early 1970s, when I was eagerly soaking up whatever there was in the form of poetry, in the Illustrated Weekly of India, it was Keki Daruwalla's poetry that I lingered on for certain specific personal reasons, though Dom Moraes and all were there too. Firstly, his poems somehow resonated with a sense of history. Secondly, his bold narrative style attracted me. And then later on, he goes on towards the end to say, it may be an irony of fate that Keki, who wrote about Stalin's secret police, notorious for their midnight knocks on the doors of writers and artists, like in his Osip Mandelstam series, were also fated to react about the climate of fear unleashed on free artistic, creative, and journalistic expression in our country 6 decades on. In a debate on national television, following serial killings of liberal writers and thinkers, in which a former Harvard professor turned politician tore into the brand of liberalism and secularism we practice, Keki stood up to him valiantly, only to be shouted at like another notorious TV anchor used to do. Never losing his poise, Keki maintained decorum in public discourse like only he could do, putting to shame the hate mongering politician. There was a third, and then the last para. Keki Daruwalla, a first ranking poet and fiction writer of the country, and a staunch believer of democratic values and equal justice with respect for human dignity, taking a definite political position, defending our freedom is heartening amidst the encircling gloom. So those are
Thank you.
excerpts from, yeah,
Yes,
it's very,
thank you.
very
Thank you
fine.
for out those valuable words that throw light on Keki sir's personality, his intrinsic being, I suppose, that shines. And though we have come to a close of the formal speakers, we also have some wonderful people from whom I would like to hear. So there's Mini Nanda, there's Shabnami Chandani, there's of course Sonia Nair, there's Nabinita Sen Gupta. Kashiana is traveling, but if Kashiana could choose to stop and speak, it would just be ever wonderful to hear her voice. So to begin with, I invite Shabnam, who has read the book very closely. Shabnam, if you could speak a few words on it.
Oh, thank you so much. Am I audible? Yes.
You are.
So this exuberant tableau of voices that we have here today, I think reflects Keki Daruwalla's poetic persona, enmeshed as it is in the everyday, the historical, the existential, the imaginative, the ancestral, and the natural. And this makes it an ever evolving tapestry of echoes, and also makes it a living ecosystem of meaning, which is exponentially relevant and topical. And I have recently reviewed this book and responded as much as I could to each voice that was included and incorporated in it. So today I'd like to very briefly share what invited a deep engagement in me as a reader. And this was the way he has straddled all these realms, but particularly the way he views existence as an interspecies relational web. And I also marvel at his deep understanding of non-linear epistemologies and the way they coalesce in his work. And as a seasoned consumer and reader and sporadic reviewer of poetry, what I really admire most is his remarkable capacity for narrative compression combined with philosophical acuity. And I'll keep it brief and thank you for listening. Great pleasure to hear you all.
Thank you so much, Shabnam. Thank you for bringing in those wonderful thoughts. And we look forward to your review of the collection and your response to these many contributors. Thank you very much. Minnie, ma'am, would you like to say something? Minnie Nanda is here, and if it's convenient for her to speak, we would love to hear her thoughts. Nobunita, if it's convenient for you to speak. Sonia, of course. Sonia, is this you are hearing us? Yes.
Yeah, I am. I am. The only thing is that I don't think I'm dressed for the occasion. So,
That's all right.
right. So, as somebody who has been closely following the progress that this Festschrift has been making and the kind of impact that it has created in the minds of all those people who have not just contributed, but also have listened in on the sessions and have, kind of drawn an idea from it, I realized that this is a very timely endeavor because in India, I don't know, somehow it's a weird tendency to look at somebody after their time has passed, and then to say all kinds of glorious things, whether you mean it or not. But here you have a writer who's so iconic, who has been so formative and so fundamental, actually. And in his lifetime, there are people who have come across from different generations across various places, people who have not met him but know him through their fathers, people who have met him in the company of their parents, people who had like no let's say familial connections with him, but have enjoyed his patronage, have enjoyed being recommended by him. So what we see here is a life and times of a writer, who of poet, who is so secure, who has shown the path in terms of how one should be. It's not enough to be called a doyen of literature and all of those glorious terms, and then to take those trophies and keep it in a shelf, but to actually act like one. And nothing brings that idea and the action of that individual forward as much as this Festschrift has done, because not only does it contextualize the let's say how this individual has to be seen in an academic context, in a cultural context, as witnessed by not just your editorial, Vasudhara, but also by a number of other writers who have talked about him in academic terms, but also the personal narratives that have gone in into this, talk about the various segments or roles that Keki Daruwalla has played in his life and time. And then you have the monumental effort that Usha has taken, not just in bringing all of your voices together, but in order to, extract a further ore of richness from Keki sir's works, through, talking about those pithy phrases and those very interesting usages that he has. So what you will get in this Festschrift is not just a celebration. It is also, how it's a compendium on how one should be as a writer, of how one should be as somebody who wants to be a mentor. It's also about how one has used language and seen the world around them. So, in that sense of the term, this Festschrift is a celebration of Keki N Daruwalla, the poet, the writer, the literary giant, the individual, the human being. And, from this, I have seen the graciousness, the grace that a writer of his stature has been able to exude. Because people far less than him have been petty, have been egotistic, have been downright irritating, to be very honest. And the same two or three achievements are constantly blared and sung about, kind of a thing. But here is this man who is self-effacing, but at the same time, who has, like you mentioned, have you heard of Urna? Did you meet Urna? Did you, that kind of a thing? See, and a number of other people who have mentioned selflessly having mentored them, reviewed their works. I think that is exemplary. The grace that somebody like him is able to show is exemplary. That's why I said this is the mark of a secure individual. So thank you for this work, Usha, for kind of bringing this individual as an exemplary, and thank you all of your contributors for being so selflessly, putting your individual selves behind and foregrounding the writer, the man himself. So I think this book is, in every sense of the term, a festschrift. Thank you.
Thank you, Sonia. And I don't think there could be more befitting words to conclude a session on this. Very, very pertinent observations on the book and on a person like Ekisa, because he was indeed all the while, he was trying to put people in touch with each other. He was trying to bring out their best, whatever it was. He was never discouraging, in whatever way. At the same time, he was very brutally honest. So all these things, they go up to kind of add in our minds to this image of a man. And I think Usha has been able to bring that out very well, because there have been contributions, but to synchronize. And I say this because I was very aware of the editorial process, and there would Usha be, across the ocean, and in my night would be her morning, and she would be feverishly working away all throughout her morning. But then even in my morning, it would be her morning. So I almost never saw her sleep during these hours. She was forever active. She's always working, getting forth, back and forth with queries. And she managed to standardize all this material that we have. So that's the kind of rigor that, editorship demands, to be able to standardize these things, to be able to make sure that they work well together. She's got back and forth with contributors on their manuscripts. So I think that, and particularly what Sonia pointed out, the aphorisms, the images, these are coming out for the first time. And this is a poetic eye perceiving another poetic eye. So I believe it's not only important for critics, it's also important for poets. To see the best of Daruwalla together at one place. That is what they will find here. Thank you very much, everyone who was present here today, who was part of the session. Minnie, ma'am, I could not hear from you.
Yeah, I could just add a little bit here.
We would
Can
love
you hear me? Bashudra, can you hear me?
Yes, Minnie, ma'am, please.
Yeah, I just chanced upon this because I saw Sonia's link and then I've just joined you. I'm not dressed, as Sonia said, I'm not dressed myself. So, but I want to share that he is a deeply revered poet, writer, and a very dear friend of our department. This Festschrift, which is a wonderful way of bringing together you beautiful people, celebrating such a gracious, such a cordial person, so full of warmth. I recall our times together in the department, in conferences, and sharing so much during the Jaipur Literary Fest. His warmth, cordiality, and graciousness, much like what Sonia has said, you people, you wonderful people, have gotten together and worked so hard. And I'm happy that he is there to see how much we value his contributions academically, culturally, and socially. So it's so wonderful to listen to you all. I wish I could have done much more, but I just chanced upon it, and I'm looking forward to reading the Festschrift. Thank you, Vashu. Thank you.
Vasudhara, you're muted.
I'm so sorry. Yes. Thank you very much, Minnie ma'am. We are very grateful that you chanced upon this link and you could join us. There is Sonia also expressing her gratitude to you in the chat box. And it was so good to hear your voice and to listen to your views on Keki sir, because I think this is what mostly happens for someone like him. Everyone everywhere is there the way he has always been there. And that mark, that human mark that falls on your spirit, that never leaves. thank you very much for reasserting faith in this, and we hope that you find a copy. One thing about Sahitya Akademi books is the availability is restricted to the Sahitya Akademi centers, but then we hope that it can be sold online through their website itself. There is a provision for certain online sales also of Sahitya Akademi books, so we hope that it should be available for online purchase also soon. Thank you very much, everyone, for a very beautiful
Vasudhara,
evening. Yes. Yes,
this is
Kashiana.
Kashyana.
Yes,
Can
yes.
I can
Yes,
I
of
just take
course.
1 minute,
Of
literally 1 minute?
course. We would love to hear you. Yes, Kashiana.
Thank you. Thank you. And it's been a delight. Of course, I cannot thank you, Usha, everybody who spoke today enough. I'm parked on the side of the road, so I'll keep my video off. But what I wanted to just say was what this has done, the discussions we've been having and the collection itself, is it represents that Keki sir cannot be boxed in. You cannot box him into anything. He's not in social context, not in literary genres, not in terms of a relationship figure, right? We just heard from some of the personal connections. He's friend, father, brother, mentor, critique, guide, not in terms of age. His largest quality that stood to me was his childlike curiosity. And he was so childlike when he interacted with you, while he, of course, has the stature that he has, and not in terms of country or in terms of religion. And we heard some of that from Thomas Sir's commentary. I want to just read one quote from one of his interviews. I don't know where, but I'd gathered it a long time ago. And he said, I have no definition of poetry. No definition can encompass an art as ancient and as wide as poetry. I like to keep myself away from definitions. That's all I want to say. I think that summarizes really what everyone has been saying. We can make him and give him the definition we feel we have experienced, and his work gives us the definition. He doesn't put himself in a box, and that's the beauty of the man and the poet. Thank you, Vasudhara.
Thank you, Kashiana. Thank you. Kashiana is traveling, and it was very, very kind of her to join us, to take time to speak to us, to engage with us continuously, as her comments in the chat box indicate. Thank you so much, Kashiana, for that wonderful quote and for this reminder that we will never be able to confine him. He will ever remain unconfined. And we are very grateful that we have been joined by Professor Jaideep Sarangi. Jaideep sir, thank you for being able to make it. I know despite your very busy schedule, if you would like to, just talk to us, to talk about this collection, about Keki sir, over to you.
Can I talk at the end?
This is the end,
This is,
Jaideep sir. We are concluding.
very sorry for my apologies, but what an important creation it is that as Usha and you must be knowing that how hard labor is put into, and all the essays and all the memoirs been collected in this particular volume are essentially putting forward Keki's best in Keki. Everyone has experiences with Keki at many places in many forms, and he is a man of different hats, and uh, his poetry, his letters to friends, his short stories, his prose, critical essays, his travelogues, and all the spheres. And as a man, Keki, I think, influenced many scholars and writers to write and to hone their skills to perfection. I know I come across and many budding writers who were nurtured by Keki and his contemporary leading writers of his generation, and his links with other writers. That is also quite mesmerizing. You know, we all present here have a very personal relationship with Keki always. And we know that Keki as a man and and a speaker in different platforms, may it be in a critical platform, academic schedule, maybe as a writer, or maybe as a trainer for writing in different parts. And all these are so important and influential in shaping up the man and the character and the writer and the process of writing. And what is another important thing that I always been attracted to Kiki is that his fascinating interactions and his ways of telling stories. There is always critics tell us that his poems are mostly stories, and these stories are not the stories that we talk of in short stories, or when he writes in short stories, or in writes in other travelogue, other prose forms. But it is something very special for any writer or any budding writer to capture the art of writing through Keki. So Keki is a teacher, and by teacher Keki, I mean all his poems are teachings, and which are important lessons for who can practice writing. And I concentrate on poetry because of the and we know his compass on and his all the spectrum is so large that cannot map it within a very short domain. I understand that all present here have enlightened us, and of course, Hearth within is an important platform for talking about discussions, interacting with reading writers, coming and this is also platform of learning, taking back at home for practice, and the Festschrift that has been prepared by edited by Usha is a trademark, is a trendsetter, I will say, which is, I think, which will be a very important book for the researchers, scholars, and all budding writers about writing process, about how to take back, the writing as one important area of moving people for changing people for good. So I'm really happy to see all of us here present. And thank you, Bashudhara, for organizing it. And even though I had a very busy schedule today, I couldn't make it. So my apologies to all of you, because it's a platform of emotions, it's a platform of sharing ideas, views, exchanges. I see the platform shining and the book traveling in time and will be reviewed from different backgrounds in different contexts. Thank you so much. Over to Ashwadhara.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for being able to join us despite how busy things have been at your end. And thank you once again for reminding us of the various things that Keki and Daruwalla stands for. We indeed see this collection doing so well. We see Usha's hard work shining through the eyes of every reader who has read this collection. The contributors, of course, but then there have been so many readers, who have excitedly had copies and have enjoyed reading them. Thank you very much once again to everyone. We are very sorry to miss all those who could not join us this evening. We are very sorry that we could not hear AJ Thomas, although he's here, but he had issues and we could not hear his voice. So I will repeat that it is like being very close to a well and being unable to draw water from it. Thomas, sir, we really miss that. Thank you very much, everyone, for coming together this evening, for spending time and conversation to talk about Keki sir and your connections with him. And we hope that he will outlive his, his our conceptions about him, and the generations to come will have new things to say about Keki Daruwalla's work. Thank you very much.
Sudhira, if everyone has a copy of the book, we can hold
Oh,
up and
yes,
take a
yes,
picture.
yes, certainly. Certainly. I will just try to take a
Ready?
shot. Yes.
I got it.
Yes.
Got it. Okay, great.
Thank you. Thank you. This is beautiful. Usha, would you like to say something?
One, I just wanted to share, maybe not say much. I think so much has been said. So many beautiful things. I wanted to show you this. For Matwala, we have a poet of honor, and we actually started our whole Matwala festivals. The first guest of honor and poet of honor was Keki Daruwalla. And we bring out a mug, it's called the Matwala mug, and we have lines of the poet behind from the guest of honor, from the poet of honor of that year. So this is the 2015 mug. And he came to Austin and he stayed with us. He stayed with me for 3 days, I think. And I want to read the lines on the back of this mug. And this is from The Glass Blower. Nothing holds fast. Decay sets in with birth. We rust like iron. We splinter like glass.
Wow.
I think two of the most profound lines he has written. So I look at that mug quite a lot. So
Very beautiful lines that you chose to inscribe on it, and a very special memory to conclude this session with. Thank you. Thank you, Usha, for showing us the mug and also for those beautiful lines. Thank you, everyone. So good day and good night, and we will keep meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
all.
Thank you
Thank
so
you
much.
so much. Thank you.
everyone.